We make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and we need to move forward. And that's what this next story is about. Ben Mintz. You might not know that name. I know a lot of my audience might not necessarily follow Barstool Sports, but let's talk a bit about what Barstool Sports is. Barstool Sports is a pop culture and sports media entertainment site. It started off as just like a small publication ran by this guy named Dave Portnoy. Since then, it has now become like this multi-million-dollar brand that thrives off a little bit of irreverence, sports news. It has entertainment news, a lot of pop culture. And they always make headlines. They make a lot of headlines because they're just, in terms of their marketing, it's fantastic, right? Well, there's a story that came out this last week about this guy named Ben Mintz. He's one of their podcast hosts. And honestly, he's not one of the most attractive guys or anything, but he is honestly, he could be a stand-in for like John Blutarsky from Animal House. That's what he kind of looks like. He looks like a John Belushi kind of character. He's goofy, but he's a Southern frat boy. And that's really what Barstool Sports kind of goes after. A lot of times it's frat boys and that kind of humor and pop culture. So this is coming out of the New York Post. This week, he made headlines after live streaming his Barstool show, Wake Up Mintzy, in which he was reading the lyrics to a Bone Thugs in Harmony hit. So it's a rap song. He was reading the lyrics to it off of his phone, and he accidentally rapped the N-word. And so we know what that means. If he accidentally rapped the N-word, his life is over. Because in the world that we live in, that is a cardinal sin. No, not necessarily in actual religion, but it is a cardinal sin to those, to the woke mob that wants to police speech. Now, I am not defending saying the N-word. I think it's wrong. There's obviously a historical context of it that makes it a word that definitely should not be used. However, he had a Ron Burgundy moment. A lot of us, I'm sure, have seen Ron Burgundy in The Anchorman. In The Anchorman, Ron Burgundy he's a newscaster that basically reads everything in front of him, and to the point of one of his enemies wants to get him fired. And then so she puts "Go F yourself" onto the teleprompter, and he reads that live on air. Just like I'd get fired if I said the full words for saying that on air on the radio. He got fired from his job as a newscaster in that movie. That's what happened here. This guy was reading a rap lyrics, and now has gotten fired from his job, no longer gets to host his podcast, no longer gets to do everything because he accidentally said the N-word. He accidentally said the N-word. Now, like I said, I'm not defending the usage, but it is insane that we live in a society for which you would get fired for an accident such as that. Ben Mintz, ended up taking to Twitter to apologize, which an apology could be warranted in some way. But the apology reads very interestingly. It says, when this happened on May 1st, he said, "This morning, I made an unforgivable mistake slipping on air while reading a song lyric. I meant no harm and have never felt worse about anything. I apologize for my actions. I'm truly sorry and ashamed of myself." Okay. An unforgivable mistake. Why is this mistake unforgivable? Now, he might just be saying that because it's kind of a way that you say something when you feel really bad about something. You say it's an unforgivable mistake. But I think it hits to a deeper theme. An unforgivable mistake would mean, like the definition suggests, that it's a mistake that cannot be forgiven. Why can't it be forgiven? I think an apology is warranted. And I think that people should accept this apology. Again, he was reading rap song lyrics. He didn't let it slip while he was calling somebody it or something like that. No, he was reading song lyrics. If you don't want people to say it, then why do you have it in the song? Do you only want your song to be listened by a certain group of people that are socially allowed and accepted to say that word? It doesn't make sense to me that we have exclusive language, things that only certain people are allowed to say, especially in America, where we have a First Amendment. Now, I always clarify that with just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean that it's the right thing to say. Just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean it's the right thing to say. That said, we shouldn't have exclusive language. We shouldn't have language that you only get to say because you are a part of some kind of inherent group, or a group that you're inherently a part of because it's your because you have your because you were born that way. That's what I'm trying to say. Because you were born that way. Exclusive language doesn't make sense. Because once we start saying, well, this person can say that, but that person can't, and but that person can say this and the other person can't, then it becomes a jumbled we are unable as a society to then identify at some point who can say what at what times. We are policing speech. That's what it's about, everybody. It's about policing speech. Again, not defending saying the N-word, but exclusive language. If we start with one word and we're able to justify and say, well, that word is so bad for white people to say white people can't say it, then who's to say eventually that will that our Overton window, the window of speech that's socially acceptable to say, will not shrink more and more and more to where you're only allowed to ever, like, that word is not allowed now. What if eventually saying black is not allowed? It wasn't for a while. At one point it was African American, and then some people were like, well, I'm not from Africa, so I'm not going to say African American. So now black is allowed. See, that's what happens is we cannot, if we continuously close the window on what is acceptable speech for certain groups of people, society will become unlivable. It's already starting to, if you ask me. But the founder of Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy, even spoke up and came out and said that that he pleaded with their parent company, Penn Entertainment, to save Mintz's job, to no avail. It's also caused a huge uproar among fans of Barstool Sports who feel that Barstool, which was built on the foundational principle of going against cancel culture, had cowered to the forces of political correctness. I can sympathize with the company's unique situation and their need to look up for their fiscal health, because obviously this is not a good look for Barstool Sports. But the whole debate brings up a larger conversation about intent and context. That's the biggest thing as we talk about rap songs, including this word, intent and context. There was no harmful intent by Ben Mintz when he said that word. Like I said, he wasn't calling anybody it. He wasn't trying to be hateful. He simply slipped. And it was an accident. And that's the biggest thing. Mistakes need to be forgiven. We can't say that slipping and having, when he had no intent, is an unforgivable mistake. It is absolutely forgivable if forgiveness is sought. Technically, all mistakes are in some way forgivable. It's the anti-religious, the woke mob that do not want to allow us to forgive things.